lament. The dead linger.
Pattern M36. Lascarbine. Buttstock notched for juvenile grip. Palm print fired into char from repeated discharge. The weapon rests in Evidence Locker Sanctum 7, sealed beneath purity wax that smells faintly of solvent. Serial scratched, not filed. Chain of custody runs from Shrine Armory to Arbite's lockup to Administratum Archive. The tag reads Evidence, not Relic. The Imperium does not fail its children. It conscripts them into systematic failure. Across a billion worlds, the machinery of faith grinds forward on schedules written in blood and blessed by necessity. Planetary tithes flow upward through administrative channels where clerks measure devotion in tonnage and souls in percentages. When ledgers show red, when quotas slip, when adult compliance wavers beneath endless war, the Administratum opens deeper drawers. Emergency protocols, temporary measures, acceptable deviations. This is the scope we will trace. Cult child soldiers spanning sanctioned ecclesiarchy youth levies, underhive redemption cadres, and heretical sects fielding choir blades. The uniforms differ, the logistics rhyme. All feed the same hunger for bodies small enough to fit through narrow spaces, light enough to carry blessing charges, young enough to believe what they are told without question. Buried in ecclesiastic archives lies Ledger 17 Theta, instituting a 12% youth tithe during planetary emergencies. The definition of emergency remains fluid. The percentage does not. Emergency Writ 440M grants the Ministorum authority to raise juvenile formations without Astra Militarum oversight, provided piety metrics are satisfied. The signatory block appears as redacted gray, but the cardinal seal burns clear in crimson wax. Before marksmanship, before drill formations, before they learn to strip a lasgun, children master the knot of silence. Thumb pressed across larynx, 2 measured breaths held while prayer hums in the chest. Instructors call it a mind-stilling rite for focus and devotion. Their knuckles bear old scars from demonstrating the technique too many times. No one explains why silence comes before sight pictures, or why the rhythm matches frequencies that calm panic rather than inspire courage. The charred handprint belongs to no name in the files. The files list a place, Shrine City, Vorga Prime. A time, month of ashes, when quotas tighten and parades double as musters. Somewhere between parish ledger and parade ground, a child became a unit. Somewhere between merit and mercy, the living became statistics that satisfied budgets. We will track paper to street and street back to paper. We will test the promise bureaucracies make to themselves, that if atrocity is witnessed, blessed, and stamped, it converts to policy. The trail leads through recruitment pipelines where hunger bargains with hope, through intake wards where doctrine writes itself in controlled starvation, through training grounds where small hands learn to grip cold. Steel. The harvest has already begun. The harvest moves along fixed routes, from hunger to oath to number. When Administratum Tithe assessments arrive quarterly, delivered by Servoskull to planetary governors, the mathematics become inescapable. Standard levies draw from populations aged 16 to 45. When those numbers fall short, when war consumes faster than worlds can breed, secondary columns open in the ledgers. Youth supplements, emergency measures, temporary authorizations that calcify into permanent policy through bureaucratic inertia. Recruitment bifurcates by institutional strata. Ecclesiarchy catechetical schools announce voluntary elevation days with incense and banners, promising fast-track absolutions and ration bonuses for extended families. In the deep hives, redemptionist chapters sweep through with fire sermons and buckets of protein paste, a bowl now for a body later. Scola progenium fragments, their Imperial Guard pipelines disrupted by attrition, redirect surplus cadets into auxiliary formations existing in legal gray zones. Heretical cells ghost the edges of these same queues, offering identical bargains without the stamp. Different hymns, identical mathematics. Processing begins in transit. Orphan barges dock at intake piers where Medikey performs salt tests, coarse saline swab on tongue, pupils measured for flicker, Auspex wand hovering for the prickling surge of psychona sensitivity. Positive cases divert to choir pits or deniable disposal, depending on overseer mood. The remainder move to confessors with clipboards, grading pliability quotient in tight columns, obedience, suggestibility, shame responsiveness. A child who cries rates malleable. A child who questions rates costly. Official fictions plaster corridor walls. Service is asked, never taken. Underfoot, scuff marks from night sweeps say otherwise. Hunger bargains trade 2 weeks of bread for signatures on plasteel slates. Sibling hostage contracts operate through implication. The younger eats if the older goes. Compliance is engineered, not chosen. Scribe Legate Varen orchestrates this machinery from his orbital station, augmetic eye translating compassion into cost-benefit analysis. His seal rides every requisition. His stylus scratches through every exemption. Local magistrates appeal to spare apprentices during Month of Ashes. Varen's red stamp converts pleas to administrative dust. On his screen, Shrine City Vorga Prime glows amber. Deficit in manufactorum output. Unrest upticks. Ecclesiarchy proposing consolidated elevation right to reinvigorate civic zeal while absorbing oversupply from multiple parishes. Oversupply. Youth cohorts exceed chapel staging capacity. Oversubscription means overflow contracts. Caterers, transport factors, relic vendors, shroud sellers, each taking sanctioned percentages. Scarcity at the bottom becomes profit at the margins. Varen's audit flags temporary deviation in juvenile rations. 200 calorie. Reduction per head for 3 weeks. Justified as penitential preparation. The savings fund extra hymnals and incense. Whether deviation represents negligence or design, the outcome is predictable. Thin bodies fit through narrower spaces. By the time children reach intake wards, names have become case codes and signatures have matured into consent. The pipeline is not metaphor, but map. Barge to pier, to ward, to drill, square to shrine. Catechism binds every joint like administrative rivets. The walls will teach the rest. The walls teach through architecture. Numbered bunks stretch in rows of 12, mattresses thin as pennants and twice as hard. Recycled air carries the tang of industrial cleanser and the undernote of too many bodies breathing the same oxygen. Boot lines chalked on ferrocrete floors mark half sizes, 7s, 8s, 9s, because the munitorum contracts for adult equipment and children must adapt. The gaps between heel and sole become lessons in making do. Morning catechisms begin before dawn, call and response timed to breathing patterns. The Emperor protects. Inhale. Through service, salvation. Hold. In death, duty. Exhale. The rhythm embeds in rib cages, heartbeats learning to march to theological time. Malnutrition scores as penance achieved, hollow cheeks proving devotion, protruding ribs marking spiritual progress. The ward confessor records each weight loss in ledgers labeled elevation metrics. Children learn the knot of silence on their 3rd day. Thumb pressed across larynx, 2 measured breaths held while the instructor demonstrates. Her knuckles show old scars from where fingernails once dug too deep during her own training decades past. Mind-stilling right, she explains, voice hoarse from years of demonstration, for focus in prayer and calm in chaos. The children practice until the motion becomes reflex. No one asks why silence comes before marksmanship training, or why the breath count matches the rhythm that will later calm panic instead of inspire courage. Composite subject. Lisa, aged 12, surrendered through barter contract. Her younger brother receives ration chits for 24 months in exchange for her 2-year service commitment. The confessor records her vow on a plasteel slat. Stylus scratching consent into permanent record. Archive proof. Her thumbprint seals the contract in red wax that smells faintly of solvent. The ward holds 104 juveniles according to intake ledgers. The mess serves 96 portions. 8 missing mouths are marked pre-assigned to honors, a designation that appears in no manual and generates no return traffic to the ward. Their bunks remain empty, numbers chalked, but sheets unissued. The other children learn not to ask about the gaps in formation. Saint Rava's phalanx passes down the sleeping line each night, a fingerbone reliquary kissed for blessing before sleep. The relic smells of solvent beneath the tarnished silver, a chemical tang that stings nostrils and leaves metallic aftertaste on lips. Children kiss it anyway, because refusal means extended fasting and isolation prayer. The bone feels too smooth, too uniform, too warm from artificial heat rather than sacred fire. Boot lines wear thin from daily drill. Mattresses compress further under weight that grows lighter each week. The confessor's ledger shows declining mass as ascending grace. In the margins, someone has scratched small marks, not tallies of days, but tallies of something else. 8 marks, 8 empty bunks, 8 pre-assigned honors that never return to explain what honor means. The walls teach patience through repetition, devotion through deprivation, silence through necessity. What they do not teach is why the missing 8 were chosen first, or why their absence creates more fear than their presence ever did. Scarcity is not malfunction here. It is doctrine written in stomachs, theology measured in grams. The catechism grid imposed on juveniles operates through caloric control, piety portions for compliance, abstention, fasts for doubt. Confessors double as quartermasters, seal stamps hanging beside ration keys, scales positioned next to altars. Every gram removed is recorded as weight lifted from the soul. Sleep cycle disruptions pair sermon with systematic depletion. Midnight catechisms drag children from bunks for obedience litanies, dawn purity drills under artificial suns that burn retinas and leave dancing spots in vision. Exhaustion becomes sacrament. The body learns to associate fatigue with devotion, confusion with receptivity. Empty stomachs make eager ears for promises of abundance through present sacrifice. Youth Prefect Malchior orchestrates the contraband exchange, disguised as contrition offerings. His girth contradicts the ward's hunger, robes straining over flesh fed by skimmed rations. Broken data slates trade for extra blankets, stim tablets for boot polish, protein bars for letters never sent home. The children learn black market theology, desire as sin, transaction as penance, survival as corruption. Malchior's hidden ledger records every trade as spiritual guidance rendered, his seal legitimizing hunger's commerce. Physical correction arrives through pain collars set to mute. No sparks, no screams, just quiet pressure, teaching compliance without spectacle. Faux mercy. The collars rest at collarbones like rosaries, metal warming against throat, children's thumbs finding the knot of silence position whenever voltage threatens. Correction without cruelty, the rubric reads, though hearts that falter under stimulation require refinement of the instrument rather than removal of the child. New instruction emerges in week 4, the closure litany. A voiced frequency chant for panic suppression, rhythm matching the knot of silence, breath count exactly. Emperor's light within us, Emperor's strength around us, Emperor's will through us. The frequency resonates in juvenile, thoracic cavities, harmonics, calibrated to slow heart rate and suppress adrenaline response. Children practice until voices blend into subsonic hum vibrating through chest bones. Lysa learns the exchange rate quickly. She trades her blanket twice weekly to extend her brother's ration chits, sits nearest the frequency meter during litany practice because perfect harmonics mean fewer corrections. Her weight drops to piety portion standards while her voice finds the exact pitch that calms panic rather than inspires courage. At night, Sant Rava's phalanx passes down the line, silver dark, with handling, chemical tang rising as servitors wipe it clean between kisses. Virtue becomes surveillance by another name. Children police each other to protect the ladle, reporting hesitation during prayer, monitoring compliance during drill. The system feeds on itself, generating its own enforcement through manufactured scarcity. Pre-assigned honors recur in whispered inventories, in chalked margins beside empty bunks. Doctrine culminates in promise. Belief will be weighed in blood at public elevation. Witnesses will measure devotion through sacrifice, faith through willingness to bleed for the emperor's glory. Outside, scribe legate Varane reviews ceremony requisitions. Stylus scratching approvals for incense, banners, bolt rounds, and body bags. The paperwork legitimizes spectacle, transforms ritual into policy, converts children into acceptable losses blessed by bureaucratic benediction. Paper legitimizes what flesh cannot witness. Ledger 17. Theta sits in ecclesiastic archives, its language clinical enough to pass as mercy. Youth tithe. 12% of applicable subpopulations during declared exigency. Footnotes cite emergency. Writ 440M. Ecclesiarchy dispensation bypassing Astra Militarum, oversight for juvenile formations. The signatory block appears as redacted gray, but the cardinal's seal burns clear in crimson wax, pressed deep enough to crack parchment beneath. Scribe legate Varen's margin notes reveal institutional logic. Irregular, but cost-effective. He circles Vorga Prime's request for expanded shrine security, writes, "Consolidate with elevation." One ceremony satisfying multiple audit requirements, order maintained, unrest cooled, quotas met. 3 fiscal quarters validated through single spectacle. Paper builds the scaffold, bodies make it stand. Cadet commissars emerge from this legal architecture, juveniles barely older than their charges, trained to recite punishments as blessings. Their bolt pistols carry reduced grain charges, precision over power for smaller targets. They learn to read hesitation in breathing patterns, doubt in micro-expressions, fear in voices that crack during closure litany. Summary execution becomes sacrament when performed by children, enforcing discipline on children. Surveillance transforms into devotion through architectural deception. Vox chambers masquerade as confessionals, brass grills hiding. Recording equipment while children whisper sins that become signals, intelligence. Wardens collect transgression as data points. Who doubts? Who questions? Who remembers the missing 8? Every confession feeds algorithms predicting compliance failure before it manifests. Statistical tables flatten, lives to tolerances. Summary correction. Mortality, 3.8% per quarter. Acceptable under current quotas given projected yield in civic conformity. Replacement costs factor against training investment, spiritual elevation measured against material depreciation. Children become line items, balancing souls against supply chains, devotion against depreciation. Procurement binds fraud to function. Requisitions list, Class 3 devotional simulacra, finger reliquary, with solvent cleaning solution bundled as sanitary unguent. The category remains legal under Writ 440M's icon amplification clause. The chemical tang in St. Rava's phalanx was not deviation. It was compliance. Faith rendered in resin, accounted as morale equipment, kissed by lips that taste synthetic sanctity. Vorga Prime represents model efficiency. Transport costs consolidated. Administrative overhead minimized, witness impact maximized through concentrated spectacle. The Shrine City's tithe deficit justifies emergency protocols, while population density ensures adequate observation for inspirational effect. Varan's procurement approvals list incense, hymnals, crowd barriers, and, surprisingly extensive medical supplies. What remains unstated is battlefield rationale. The paperwork assumes tactical niche for small bodies and pliant minds, assumptions explaining why honors issue without armor, why Knot of Silence precedes marksmanship, why chants tune to growing thoracic cavities. Legal architecture proves efficiency without arguing ethics. Next comes the logic converting ward into weapon, justifying the shape of sacrifice through tactical necessity. Tactical doctrine emerges from anatomical necessity. Small frames fit through breacher ducts, where adult shoulders jam against corrugated steel. Light bones carry blessing charges through crawl spaces, detonation timers clicking against ribs barely visible through skin stretched by penance. Auspex beads braided into hairmark, spotter runners weaving between suppressive fire, their size creating targeting difficulties until movement stops. Hymn casters maintain zeal in collapsing structures where adult voices crack under stress, but juvenile throats still carry the closure litany, above screaming. The advantages appear in tactical assessments, speed across broken ground, infiltration through maintenance systems designed for servitor frames, psychological impact when enemies hesitate before child targets. Zeal uncorrupted by experience, no learned fear, no battlefield cynicism, no survival instincts competing with orders. The costs balance equally: bone fragility under recoil stress, panic transmission when one breaks, vulnerability to suppressive fire calibrated for adult cover requirements. Training rehearses the maze it intends to feed. The drill square transforms nightly into foamcrete warrens mapped from Vorga Prime's Shrine Quarter. Door charges hang from harnesses sized for rib cages still growing. Instructors insist on practicing unarmored. Weight teaches bad habits. Plates catch on door frames, they explain. When asked about armor provision for deployment, answers arrive as silence smelling faintly of solvent. Lisa learns entry angles with chalked arcs on walls, counting breaths in the knot of silence to still tremor before sprint drills. The confessor cues closure litany during stemline injections, harmonics keeping hands steady while needles find veins starved by systematic penance. Chemical courage floods juvenile nervous systems, heart rates spiking then settling into conditioned rhythm. Stim rationing breeds internal economics. Older cadets shave doses into scrap foil for trade with desperate youngers, chemical courage exchanged for ration chits or blanket privileges. Youth Prefect Malchior's blind eye costs contrition offerings, but competition improves unit cohesion through manufactured hierarchy. Children learn to price survival, convert fear into transaction, manage scarcity as spiritual discipline. Procurement manifests reveal tactical deployment through elimination. Physical correction collars activate during breacher simulations, teaching lessons about confined spaces and electrical hazards. Children who seize under stimulation recycle to support roles. Those maintaining function advance to live fire exercises with reduced grain ammunition that still kills at close range. The revelation crystallizes through Varan's scheduling. Elevation Rite doubles as live fire consecration within Vorga Prime's Shrine Quarter. Arbites and militant orders observing for doctrinal validation. Crowd barriers positioned for spectacle, not safety. Medical supplies scaled for mass casualty, not ceremonial injury. Honors definition clarifies. First wave, zero armor, relic held high for witness identification and tactical marking. Final instruction distributes among Lysa's cohort. Knot of Silence for panic control. Closure, litany for formation maintenance. Saint Rava's phalanx among front ranks. Resin fingerbone identifying bodies for proper burial after objectives achieve. The tactical niche justifies everything. Children as expendable precision instruments. Deaths purchasing adult compliance through witnessed sacrifice. Vox tests crackle along chapel walls during final rehearsal. Subsonic bleed crawls under the closure litany, almost but not quite on pitch. Someone else shares the network. No one calls halt. Schedules outrank doubts here. The route from ward to shrine is chalked, boots aligned on half sizes, incense ordered, ammunition accounted. Incense haze mingles with recycled rain, sluicing from shrine eaves, the chemical fog clinging to throats, already constricted by hunger. Saint Rava's phalanx circulates among front ranks, resin fingerbone kissed by trembling mouths that taste synthetic sanctity and preservation solvent. Lisa holds position bareheaded in formation's heart, closure litany humming in her ribcage at precisely calibrated frequency. Around her, 95 other voices blend into subsonic resonance designed to suppress panic rather than inspire courage. Crowd barriers bow under pilgrim weight while parish banners snap above unarmored heads. From his balcony perch, Scribe Legate Varan positions stylus over requisition forms, counting bodies against projected yield. Below, arbits and militant orders deploy for doctrinal validation, medical stations concealed behind ceremonial banners, mass casualty preparation disguised as ritual flourish. A robed demagogue moves through the crowd, face hidden beneath ragged hood, voice answering litany with countercant that bleeds through shrine speakers. Subsonic interference crawls under sacred harmonics, almost but not quite on pitch. The Vox channel's accepted because access codes remain valid and stamped. Children's voices crack as trained resonance wars against acoustic sabotage. The command echoes through compromised speakers. Not of silence. Thumbs press across larynxes, 2 breaths held while the world narrows to chest vibrations. Panic surges but cannot voice itself. Training locks throats while terror widens eyes. The silence is not peace, but internalized horror. Screams swallowed by conditioned reflex. Live fire consecration begins without ceremony. Charges detonate in flanking habitation blocks, shaped explosions designed to breach and funnel. Arbits return suppressive fire, while mini-storm militants push juvenile formations forward through smoke and debris. Prove worth through blood. Amplified voices command. First wave, 0 armor. Relics held high for identification and tactical marking. Fragmentation cuts small bodies first. Bone fragility under explosive stress manifests as tactical reality. Ribs separating, joints dislocating, voices maintaining closure litany, even as throats fill with blood. The formation stumbles over fallen forms, while shrapnel teaches lessons about cover through negative reinforcement. A child breaks formation, running toward crowd barriers. The cadet commissar beside him steps forward, places reduced grain bolt round through the small back. Precise entry, calculated impact. Body folding into instructor-approved pious posture. Mercy from dishonor, the young enforcer intones, face masked by trained devotion. Saint's phalanx shatters cagainst ferrocrete, silver casing splitting to reveal yellow resin core. Solvent weeps from synthetic bone, chemical tang mixing with cordite and blood. Procurement fraud exposed as sacrament. Children kissing fragments because conditioning surpasses evidence. Varen's stylus moves across forms, converting carnage to cost-benefit analysis. 1. Partial collapse in Nave Arcade. 14 juveniles past first marker. 3 charges dropped, unfired. Witness impact ascending because no one looks away. He notes compromised Vox channel, draws line to shrine maintenance procurement, writes later beside both entries. Suppressive fire converges on speakers. The demagogue stumbles, hood falling to reveal scarred face and augmented voice box. Not external heretic, but mini-storm cantor gone sectarian. Insider knowledge explaining ceremony timing, Vox access, tactical positioning. The enemy wears familiar robes because the enemy learned from identical training, mirroring the institution that created her. The sequence crystallizes in reflection. Lisa's eyes catching burning banners above. Small hands still gripping relic fragments. Closure litany humming through damaged vocal cords. Witnessed sacrifice. Purchasing adult compliance through juvenile blood. Devotion measured in acceptable losses blessed by bureaucratic necessity. The ceremony achieves validation. Medical supplies justify procurement. Crowd barriers channel witness impact effectively. The machine adjusts, converts, continues. Paper defeating people while people become paper. Faith rendered in fragments kissed by lips that taste synthetic sanctity and will never question its source again. Servo gurneys nose through debris like beetles, ankle tags fluttering as they sort flesh by salvage potential. Each plasteel strip bears case code and disposition. Elevated, recycle, sanction. Prayer strips staple into cooling skin while mediseki work with clinical efficiency. Incense burning to mask the smell of bowel release and fear sweat. Survivors cluster in triage areas where the knot of silence finds new purpose. Mediki, repurpose the breathing technique as euthanasia posture. Thumb across larynx. 2 measured breaths held while drip lines empty mercy into veins. Children perform the motion without instruction. Die in formation, even when formation no longer serves function. Training outlasts trauma. Conditioning surpasses consciousness. Varen's preliminary report reduces carnage to cost per square meter of reclaimed shrine block. 14 juveniles marked elevated against minimal structural damage. Efficiency metrics favorable. The shattered relic appears as procurement irregularity rather than blasphemy. Administrative deviation, not doctrinal crisis. His stylus marks resin substitution acceptable under current guidelines, while evidence teams bag fragments. Data audit trails resolve the critical question. Emergency writ 440Ms. Redaction clears under inquisitorial access. Cardinal's sigil authorizing juvenile live fire validation months prior to ceremony. The riot was not aberration, but planned validation of policy framework. Child formations as low-cost urban clearance tools wrapped in piety. Institutional function disguised as sacred duty. The heretical cantor lies among detained voice box sparking. Her confession reveals institutional mirror. Former Ministorum personnel turned sectarian after orders to falsify relic manifests. She learned harmonics here, only turned the dial. Enemy wearing familiar robes because enemy learned from familiar training. Both sides feeding on juvenile sacrifice through identical logistics. Procurement manifests confirm systematic preparation. Class 3. Devotional simulacra ordered in bulk. Synthetic bone material sourced through standard vendors. The fraud was compliance. Faith rendered in resin because resin costs less than bone and performs identical psychological function. Children kissed synthetic sanctity because synthetic sanctity was budgeted, approved, blessed. Cleanup proceeds according to manual. Bodies sorted, evidence cataloged, witness statements collected for inspirational redistribution. Manufactoria shift whistles show improved punctuality. Vendors count days' takings from absolution sales and memorial trinkets. The spectacle achieved intended effect. Adult compliance purchased through juvenile blood. Survivor disposition follows protocol. Elevated cases receive commendation and family tithe reduction. Recycle cases transfer to support roles or servitor conversion. Sanction cases disappear into administrative void. Lisa's tag reads elevated, though her pulse still flickers. Paperwork outranks physiology here. Fresh ankle tags print for incoming cohorts. The reliquary case reappears, polished, another resin finger sealed within. Ward bunks are chalked for new numbers. Confessors update elevation metrics while Malchior weighs contrition offerings. The machine adjusts parameters, refines procedures, continues operation. Varan transmits ledger and powers down his augmetic eye. Next quarter's youth. Tithe already approved at 12%. Ledger 17. Theta persistent. Validation achieved. The altars are swept. The doctrine stands. Paper defeats people while people become paper. Statistics satisfying audits through witnessed sacrifice. The edict trail unravels like prayer beads through administrative channels. Cardinal prefect circulars instruct provincial confessors on temporary autonomy for redemption cadet raising during tithe pressure spikes. The language remains clinical. Authorized deviation from standard recruitment protocols pending sector compliance restoration. Temporary becomes permanent through bureaucratic inertia. Deviation becomes doctrine through repetition. The emergency was not war, but ledger. Redacted minutes surface under inquisitorial clearance, revealing institutional logic naked of pious wrapper. Varan arguing against juvenile armor procurement. Elevation must be witnessed to inspire adult compliance. Protection diminishes inspirational impact. The perceived virtue, sanctified duty through service, reveals hidden violence. Children as terror spectacle. Deaths purchasing civic obedience through witnessed sacrifice. Witness becomes instrument. The heretical demagogue at Vorga Prime was Ministorum Cantor turned sectarian, but her conversion followed predictable trajectory. Orders to falsify relic manifests, synthetic bone passed as sacred solvent-preserved faith, sold to lips that trusted institutional blessing. She learned harmonics in these same chapels, turned identical training against identical methods. The mirror reflects perfectly, because both sides graduated from the same schools. Commissariat memoranda confirm systematic preparation spanning months. Closure litany. Harmonics calibrated to youth thoracic capacity for optimal panic suppression. The breathing technique designed not for devotion but behavioral control. Frequencies tested on juvenile vocal cords to maximize compliance under stress. Sacred becomes clinical, becomes tactical, becomes routine through administrative momentum. State cult and heretic cult prove materially indistinguishable. Both engines feed on young bodies, both wrap atrocity in hymns, both convert hunger into obedience through controlled scarcity. The uniforms differ, the ledgers rhyme. Procurement routes share vendors, transport factors, even relic suppliers. Synthetic bone sourced from identical chemical processors, regardless of doctrinal allegiance. The trafficking networks mirror each other across doctrinal lines. Black market stim dealers serve both sides. LHO vendors supply hymnal paper to state and heretic alike. Children defect between formations for fuller bowls and softer songs, ideology secondary to caloric mathematics. The same motorway carries tithe barges and heretic transports, dual toll collectors sharing revenue streams. Youth Prefect Malchior's contraband exchange operates through identical mechanics, whether blessing comes from emperor or chaos. Hunger creates compliance. Scarcity enforces belief. Survival prices itself in contrition offerings. His hidden ledger could serve either altar without changing columns or calculations. Cardinal's seal burns on every authorization, rubber stamp, handled by subordinates who never read the text. Emergency protocols calcify into permanent policy, while temporary measures outlast the emergencies that justified them. Writ 440M auto-renews. Quarterly. Signatory block unchanged. Juvenile formations legitimized through administrative momentum. The machine that created the heretical cantor continues creating her replacements. Former confessors turned sectarian, ex-commissars gone rogue, catechists embracing forbidden harmonics. They learn from the system, mirror its methods, feed its hunger through opposition. The enemy wears familiar robes because the enemy graduated from familiar schools, learned from familiar manuals, serves the same appetite wrapped in different hymns. The sump temple reeks of promethium and rotting flesh. But children receive what the shrine withheld: food without prayer, names without numbers, the right to scream without correction collars. Oil lamps stain corrugated walls with soot, while runoff pools beneath stim vats that bubble without blessing. Here the litany reverses: breath weaponized through release, not suppression. Where the knot of silence cut throats, heretic rites open them. Rites differ linguistically, but not logistically. The same cues form: identical hunger drives compliance. Small bodies fit through the same spaces. Blade tests prick palms for seniority rankings. Crude augmetics bolt into growing bone without anesthetic. Rusted fingers replacing flesh that never healed. Children receive gifts that bloom as tumors, mutations scored as elevation rather than damnation. The pain remains identical. The control mechanisms function without modification. Warband Crimson Choir uses juvenile voices to anchor ritual, subsonic harmonics tearing warp rifts through coordinated chanting. The price is the choir. Throats rupture under dimensional stress, vocal cords shredding as reality bleeds. Children sing until silence consumes them, replacements stepping forward because hunger outweighs horror. The tactical niche justifies everything. Expendable precision instruments purchasing advantage through witnessed sacrifice. The trafficker operates from neutral ground, data cuff glinting as she sells LHO sticks and lassels to both sides. Her ledgers reference the same cargo codex used by mini-Storum factors: identical serial blocks, identical insurance oaths, identical motorway sharing tithe routes, and black market canals with dual toll collectors. She calls it efficiency. The children call it normal. A boy defects from Redemption Cadre to Slaneshi Clique the week after witnessing elevation. He follows the smell of frying yeast to find full bowls and songs without mandated silence. The exchange rate proves identical: body for sustenance, devotion for protection, future for present survival. His new name is sung into him while perfume erases the old. He learns different harmonics that still flatten fear when blades emerge. Not moral difference, but price difference. Heretical confessors operate through inverted piety. Corruption as elevation, screaming as prayer, mutation as blessing. The surveillance remains, children policing each other for heretical purity, just as they learned orthodox compliance. Procurement networks interweave across doctrinal boundaries. Relic vendors supply both altars with synthetic bone and preservation chemicals. Transport factors move juvenile cargo without examining destination manifests. Both systems consume the young through identical mathematics. Imperial order wraps hunger in cold steel. Chaos embraces it in writhing flesh. The uniforms change color. The ledgers persist. Children become currency exchanged between orthodoxy and heresy, compliance and corruption. Flesh converts to statistics through witnessed sacrifice regardless of which altar receives the offering. The heretical demagogue learned harmonics in Mini-Storum chapels before turning identical methods against identical targets. Enemy mirrors system because enemy graduated from system, serves the same appetite through inverted devotion. The machine feeds itself through opposition, creating its own resistance to justify its own existence. The machine that breeds its own enemies also breeds its own administrators, and the mathematics prove unsustainable. Survivors tracked across a decade reveal institutional cannibalism written in damaged psychology and depleted demographics. Lysa's cohort, those few who achieved adulthood, now stand before new intake wards demonstrating the knot of silence with scarred knuckles, voices hoarse from years of closure litany instruction. Trauma clones itself as policy, the abused becoming instructors, victims converted to instruments perpetuating identical cycles. Post-traumatic stress expresses as weaponized zeal rather than breakdown. Commissars recite the same breathing frequencies to steady firing lines. Gang lieutenants enforce small catechisms learned in shrine quarters, authority born from survived brutality. Self-harm sanctifies as penance, prayer marks carved into forearms, chemical burns from synthetic relics worn as sacred scarification. Intimacy collapses into ritual because families demand more resources than formations. Many vanish into servitor conversion racks, where damaged minds find peace through lobotomy. The knot of silence persists in servo-skull programming, thumb positions translated to mechanical gestures, breath patterns encoded in respiratory systems. Even machines inherit institutional trauma, carrying conditioning into automated functions. Economic projections reveal the sustainability crisis. Birth rates decline in shrine districts drained of adolescents, replacement populations shrinking as survivors struggle with reproduction. Manufactoria lose apprentices to juvenile levies, then requisition servitors to close gaps, cannibalizing future skill for present quotas. Varran's ledgers track the macro balance. Youth tithe dependency, rising 5 points across 3 subsectors, emergency protocols normalizing into permanent policy through bureaucratic momentum. Salt test borderline cases channel to choir pits where psychana sensitivity becomes tactical asset. Juvenile throats anchor ritual harmonics, voices shredding against dimensional barriers until replacement becomes necessary. Attrition remains acceptable under current quotas because breeding programs disguised as orphanages maintain input streams. The cycle self-corrects only by consuming dissent. Those who question disappear into servitor ranks. Those who resist meet correction through pain collars set beyond mute settings. Those who adapt become administrators, compliance purchasing survival through complicity. The system adjusts parameters but never direction, refines efficiency without examining purpose. Yet, pressure accumulates at institutional seals. A medicacy falsifies weight charts to disqualify the smallest bodies. A quartermaster loses shipments of pain collars in transit delays. A catechist teaches closure litany offbeat, introducing harmonic errors that prevent panic suppression. An Arbates proctor delays ceremony permits past month of ashes scheduling. Small acts cannot change ledgers, but sometimes they change names on transport barges. The war economy eats tomorrow to feed today, writing clean receipts for borrowed time. Demographic mathematics approach critical thresholds where voluntary compliance cannot sustain operational tempo. The machine feeds on its own waste, converts trauma to institutional loyalty, transforms childhood into administrative continuity. Paper defeats people, but people still hold the stamps. The stamps tremble in hands that remember being small. Medicae Joric falsifies weight charts with surgical precision, adding 3 grams to skeletal frames until malnutrition disqualifies the smallest from honor rolls. His stylus scratches salvation into ledgers. 10 children redirected to support roles through creative mathematics. The audit trail remains clean because fraud serves institutional efficiency narratives. Quartermaster Vex loses pain collar shipments in transit bureaucracy, 300 units vanishing into administrative void while replacement orders cycle through procurement delays. Children train without correction apparatus for precious weeks, voices finding natural rhythm during closure litany practice. Some learn to sing rather than suppress, though voltage returns with penalties attached. Sister Catechist Mira teaches breathing techniques offbeat, introducing harmonic errors that prevent panic weaponization. Her students hum frequencies that calm rather than control, rhythm matching heartbeats instead of tactical requirements. The deviation appears as instructor incompetence rather than deliberate sabotage. Mistakes are common among the zealous. Dock Clerk Haniel reroutes relic shipments to dusty monastery storage where synthetic bone ages in darkness instead of touching juvenile lips. His manifest stamps redirect Class 3. Devotional simulacra to contemplative orders that question nothing and kiss nothing. Transport factors collect payment while cargo disappears into archival silence, chemical tang unsmelled. Arbites Proctor. Valdez delays ceremony, permits past month of ashes scheduling, bureaucratic friction grinding spectacle into postponement. His seal withholds until forms achieve impossible perfection, requirements multiplying through administrative interpretation. 6 lives saved through procedural obstruction nobody will ever meet. Most resistance fails. The machine adjusts, compensates, continues. Jorik's weight falsifications trigger Medikey. Review boards standardizing measurement protocols. Vex's lost shipments prompt procurement redundancy requiring triple sourcing. Mira's harmonic deviations result in instructor retraining, emphasizing frequency precision. Paper defeats people through. At institutional learning. Yet some save 3, some save 4. Vok's sister Teresa and lay brother Marcus smuggle 7 children off-world under Pilgrim transit papers, census variants explained as clerical error. The transport departs during shift change when attention divides between duty stations. Knot of silence breaks deliberately for the first time in years. Children shout names through recycled air, Lisa, echoing through cargo holds where synthetic relics cannot silence truth. The ship never makes scheduled translation. Census drone flags, passenger variants. Silence order falls too late. Varen's next audit reveals statistical anomalies across multiple sectors, weight discrepancies, procurement delays, harmonic deviations, transport irregularities. His stylus connects lines into policy adjustments. Quotas rise by fractions. The machine learns their names only to erase them. The quiet saboteurs understand their mathematics. They cannot stop the machine. They can only slow it down. Pattern M. 36. Lascarbine rests in evidence locker. Sanctum 7. Small palm print fired into char from repeated discharge. Purity wax seals the container, smelling faintly of solvent. Synthetic preservation for synthetic sanctity. The tag reads, evidence, though no trial requires testimony from the dead. Scribe Legate Varen signs next quarter's youth tithe authorization with mechanical precision. Ledger 17. Theta persists with updated notation. Validation achieved, methodology approved, sector-wide. 12% becomes floor, not surge. Emergency writ 4-4. 0M auto-renews quarterly. Cardinal's seal now rubber stamp handled by Zul, subordinates who never read authorization text. Paper outlasts people. Policy survives its creators. Saint Rava's phalanx reappears in fresh reliquary cases. Resin fingerbone sealed within polished silver. Chemical tang neutralized through improved preservation formulas. Procurement manifests list, Class 3. Devotional simulacra as standard equipment. Faith rendered in synthetic materials because synthetic costs less than authentic while performing identical psychological function. Closure litany. Standardizes across dioceses. Frequencies listed to 3 decimals. Annex notes warn, avoid deviations reducing suppression efficacy. Knot of silence migrates to Medicaid appendices as palliative posture for terminal cases. Thumb across larynx, 2 breaths held while mercy empties into veins. The institution absorbs subversion, neutralizing resistance through administrative conversion. Training cadre roles show familiar names in instructor positions. Lisa listed as elevated, though her pulse ceased during Vorga Prime's consecration. Bureaucratic resurrection through clerical necessity. She teaches breathing techniques to new children who will teach newer children. Trauma cloning itself as policy through witnessed repetition. Ward bunks receive fresh chalk marks. Confessors update elevation metrics. Youth Prefect Malchior weighs contrition offerings from incoming cohorts. The machine adjusts parameters, refines procedures, continues operation through institutional momentum. Sister Catechist Mira's harmonic deviations generate policy, requiring instructor certification. Even rebellion becomes regulation when properly documented. Open loops close through procedural completion, signatory identified, cardinal's authority calcified into automated function. Naught's purpose revealed, panic suppression, weaponized as devotion. Synthetic relics approved for standard procurement. Harmonic frequencies standardized to prevent instructor deviation. The 12% normalized as operational baseline rather than emergency measure. Junior clerk heats cardinal seal in brazier flame, pressing crimson wax into fresh authorizations. Molten drops. Pool like blood on parchment while camera lingers on lascarbine stock. Small handprint bearing witness to institutional continuity. The machine that breeds its own enemies breeds its own administrators, converting childhood into administrative function through systematic harvest. The stamp falls, wax cools, ledger closes. Small hands learn to grip cold steel while paper defeats people who become paper. Statistics satisfying audits through witnessed sacrifice. The harvest continues.